is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Brian Cain, president of Keiretsu Forum, Philadelphia. Keiretsu Forum is a global investment community of accredited private equity angel investors, venture capitalists, and corporate institutional investors. Keiretsu Forum is a worldwide network of capital, resources, and deal flow with 53 chapters on 4 continents. Keiretsu Forum members invest in high-quality, diverse investment opportunities. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hall.
So can you share with us a little bit about your journey from the manufacturing sector to becoming entrenched in the early stage investment community?
Yeah, it was just a continued evolution. I spent quite an amount of time with very large pharma companies. I've also was with incredibly small startup biotech companies. And I found that working with the small biotech companies for me was just a really, really fun thing to do. And it got me involved in early stage of those companies and what it took to make sure those companies reached milestones and got to either exits or IPOs.
Great. So what motivated you to pivot your career towards supporting early stage ventures?
Yeah, as we would bring companies into the fold in the larger company that I was with, and to assess companies in terms of should we do deals with them, some sort of buy them or look to do a partnership. I found that I really enjoyed working with the early stage companies. I also found that we became really good at assessing those companies in terms of what were their strengths and areas for improvement and what helped them to become viable. So I found that was just something I really just liked to do.
What led you to the Keiretsu Forum's Philadelphia chapter? How have you seen the chapter evolve under your leadership?
So the first thing was, I went to a Keiretsu Forum Capital Expo and very quickly found a couple key important elements. And the first was the membership. These folks are successful people. They're really knowledgeable in their domain area. They are on top of the investment community and they make good choices. And, in an all-day session, by talking with them, I was really able to learn a lot about them. In parallel that day, I also saw these startup companies in terms of ideas that they were, wanting to get to market, as well as where they were with their funding. And part of the discussions with them, I observed that they needed, help, either mentorship or potential domain area expertise. And they were very open to that. And Keiretsu is also open to wanting to help its investment community.
As chapter president of Philadelphia, how do you approach supporting a wide range of entrepreneurs and ventures?
So I think it really comes down to, the core of it is this due diligence process. And I start there because it's at that moment where together with the company, the CEOs, the founders, we're able to have good, honest discussions about where the company is, what are the risks with the companies, and what needs to be done to mitigate those risks or attempt to mitigate those risks. And that's at the venue where we start talking with those companies in terms of supporting them with investments and also supporting them, and supporting them with whatever help they might need. And so that due diligence process for me, I'm finding it to be seemingly unique at Keiretsu in terms of the depth of it. And that's something that really led me to wanting to be part of Keiretsu Philadelphia.
Well, Keiretsu Forum is known for its rigorous company vetting process for investments. Can you explain this process and how it benefits both investors and entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Ultimately, for me, this due diligence process has to just be an incredibly objective look under the hood. And that's what we do. We look at every component of the company. We are bringing in areas of expertise that are doing the work, from experience in human resource management, finance, supply chain, commercial, IP, contract lawyers. We really want to know what the company is and what it isn't. And we want to be succinct to get to the key areas of opportunity as well as risks of those companies. So as investors, with that information, we want to be able to go in with our eyes wide open in terms of, yes, these are startup companies and not all of them make it, but we want to use that due diligence process to really thoroughly understand, what this company is. And that for me, it's just, a ton of fun to do that assessment.
So when it comes to making investment decisions, how collaborative is the process among the Philadelphia chapter members? Is there a structured approach, or do members operate more independently?
Yeah, so I could go on in chapter and verse about this. I'll keep it high level, and please, Hall, ask more details. It happens two ways. First, in the very, very formal process of Keiretsu Forum, forums where questions and answers start happening. Then it gets into a little bit more involved in tell me more about your company. And then ultimately the due diligence process becomes that formal situation. Where it really happens though is, I'm on calls, I call peer investors call me half a dozen times a week. And we talk about companies. Where are they? Where aren't they? What do I think? Why not? What do you think? I purposely reach out to folks who have different expertise than I do and ask them, hey, what do you think about this company? And tell me why. What might I be missing? And so I put a lot of weight on the formal process for sure. And I also put a ton of weight on this informal process in terms of really wanted to make sure peer investors have a pretty good sense about what the company is, as well as I understand the company, not just from my set of eyes, not from the formal DD report, from other individual eyes as well.
Brian, could you describe the typical profile of early stage company investors in the Keiretsu Forum, particularly those in the Philadelphia chapter?
This would be my description. First I see people who are incredibly successful. And I say that not in an arrogant way, but successful in terms of folks who have worked hard in their careers, worked very hard, worked diligently, fundamentally understand what it takes to deliver value in their roles. And because of that, they've high net worth individuals who are looking to leverage their knowledge base, who are looking to grow not just financially, but to grow their mind and wanting to be anchored to new ideas, new ways, new solutions, new technology. And these are folks who have a zeal just to learn more. And in that learning process, it's a really, that profile, it's one of the things that Keiretsu we don't talk a lot about, but I think we really help people to continue, grow, and learn.
In your experience, what motivates these investors to get involved in early stage investments? And what are they looking for in potential ventures?
Yeah, it comes into what I'd call two buckets. There are folks who are really, really interested in the financial side of it and very, very diligent from the financial side about making investment choices, staying on top of their investment portfolio, who can speak to their own internal rate of return, why not they're investing, how they map out their portfolios. And I think there's a second group. Certainly, the second group does all those things financially. And the second group also spends an awful lot of time learning about domain areas, learning about new ideas, spends a lot of time learning about things that they weren't knowledgeable about. And while both groups are good, and we have what I'll call folks who spend time on financial and folks who spend time on financial and other things, the network pulls it all together in terms of linking those two groups.
Well, based on your experience, what emerging trends do you foresee in the early stage investment landscape, especially in your area?
So, an obvious answer is obvious, but not really. AI. And, we're starting to see more and more AI companies, and I'm starting to hear more questions from investors, peer investors about what is AI? And I'm starting to hear these investors ask much more detailed questions about what are the kinds of AI problems that are trying to be solved or problems that can be solved with AI. Where are they by, sector? Where are they within a funnel of within sectors? So, I have a strong depth in pharma, biotech, healthcare, and we're starting to see AI, for instance, populate throughout what I'd call a care continuum. And as that happens, what we see evolving is potential solutions that weren't here 3 years ago are now being worked on. And that's just a ton of fun to watch, learn, and talk with CEOs, founders about why they believe their solution can be solved in that manner.
And lastly, what are your thoughts on or advice would you like to share with our private equity investors and early stage entrepreneurs listening today?
Yeah, I guess if there was advice, it would be, do everything you can to, leverage this network. The reason I say leverage it by, listening to the significant expertise that's in the Keiretsu Forum network. There's folks who might appear to be quiet. However, when you ask them an open-ended question about, tell me what you think about this investment, or on this DD report, it's listing this as a risk. How do you assess that? Where would you see the depth of the risk is? Do you think the company's mitigating the risk? So I would say to you, do everything you can to leverage the network and listen to them.
Great. And what's your advice for those listeners interested in learning more about Keiretsu Forum or attending a meeting? How can they get involved?
Sure. First, reach out, give me a call, email me. That'd be wonderful to hear. Pick up the phone, talk to one of us about what you think why you'd want to be part of this. Let's talk about where we think we can help you, where we think we might not be able to help you with it. And then let's have a good discussion about good ways to build a portfolio. I 4 or 5 times a year talk to different investors about how they're building their angel portfolio. And each time I do, I get a different perspective, a different reason why they're going with a company to a greater depth or with a company not to the same extent. And so it's helping me grow as an angel investor.
Well, we'll include your contact details in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Great. Thanks, all. Thanks for the time. A lot of fun. Take care.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.